Next on the news. A city reduced to ashes, once home to almost nearly 500,000 people. But the Ukrainian president won't surrender. Meanwhile, the U.S. is preparing for a different kind of attack. And Pope Francis on a pilgrimage of healing. He's about to welcome Indigenous Canadians to the Vatican for a long-awaited meeting about the deaths of thousands of children.
I believe that judges are not policymakers.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson back for day 2 of her confirmation hearings to the Supreme Court. Tough questions coming her way. Plus this. Out of the bomb shelter and into a stadium of thousands, this little girl performing for Ukraine. Currents News starts right now. I'm Christine Persichetti. It's coming. President Biden warning that the Russians can and more than likely will unleash a cyber attack on the United States. He's warning American businesses to strengthen their company's defenses immediately. Meanwhile, the U.S. is also confirming that Russia used hypersonic missiles when it attacked Mariupol, leaving that city in ruins. Chris Wynn has the latest.
Ukraine on the offense after regaining control of Kyiv, threatening Russian resupply as well as efforts to circle the city. But as the Ukrainian counterattack appears to make some headway, U.S. officials now believe Russian President Vladimir Putin's next escalation could be a direct cyber attack on the United States.
We are constantly monitoring our own critical infrastructure here at the Pentagon and throughout the U.S. government to make sure that we can remain resilient against a cyber attack.
An urgent warning to American businesses to strengthen their cyber defenses immediately.
The president has been very clear. If we're attacked in cyberspace, there will be consequences for that.
The Biden administration says the private sector can guard against cyber attacks by using multi-factor authentication and changing passwords across networks. The alert comes as Russia continues its assault.
In the moment and each day Mariupol is destroyed more and more. Till now, in our estimation, about 90% of our infrastructure is damaged and destroyed.
The southeastern port city of Mariupol, once home to more than 450,000 people, now reduced to rubble. Families fleeing for their lives, unsure of where to go.
I'm 84, and this was the first time in my life when I felt horror. I couldn't believe it happened. It was just a shock.
In Washington, Chris Wynn, Currents News.
So what would a Russian cyber attack look like? Well, the U.S. has been victim to them before. The latest, and perhaps one of the biggest, was the breach of Colonial Pipeline last year. Taking the system down disrupted gas supplies all along the east coast of the United States, causing chaos and panic. The so-called Dark Side gang was behind the attack, and investigators believe they operate out of Russia. To avoid further disruption, Colonial Pipeline eventually gave in to the gang's demands and paid the group $4.4 million in Bitcoin. Thankfully, U.S. law enforcement was able to recover much of that ransom. It's not every day you receive a phone call from the Holy Father, but the Ukrainian president received his second one on Tuesday. According to Zelensky, the Pope is extremely concerned with the growing humanitarian crisis and the blocking of rescue corridors by Russian troops. Pope Francis again offered to mediate the conflict, but Russia has yet to express any interest in that. In return, Zelensky told the Pope that he hopes the Holy Father will make a visit to Ukraine to promote peace. And while there are no plans for the Pope to visit Ukraine anytime soon, the Holy Father does have another plan to promote peace. He'll consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary this Friday. The solemnity will take place at St. Peter's Basilica. At the same time, priests from all over the world will be joining him in prayer, performing their own consecrations. The Diocese of Brooklyn will join in all Friday morning, starting at 8 a.m. from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. Mass will be celebrated in English for the solemnity of the Annunciation of the Lord, with a prayer for the consecration after. That will be repeated in Spanish at 9 a.m. and in Creole at 10 a.m. At 11, Bishop Robert Brennan will lead a holy hour prayer for peace at St. James Cathedral Basilica, followed by Mass at noon. Then at 1 o'clock, you can watch the Vatican consecration right here on NET. Now for some welcome news to New York City. After 2 years, the last masks are about to be removed, and that's off the tiniest faces.
Our percent of positivity has remained low, which is a great sign that we're moving at the right pace and doing the right thing. And so now it's time to peel back another layer in this entire initiative.
Children 4 years old and younger may no longer need to cover up in public schools and daycare facilities starting April 4th. But the mayor's decision could flip if the city sees an increase. State health officials just announced an uptick in COVID cases due to a new subvariant. The decision to ditch the masks comes as the Department of Education is experiencing a mass exodus. According to the city, 120,000 students and families have left public schools in the past 5 years. And while they are determined to attract families back to the public school system, the department is starting to budget to make up for those big losses. The DOE has other issues that need fixing and money, including rundown buildings and crumbling infrastructure. While students have been leaving public schools, that hasn't been the case for their Catholic counterparts. Many academies in the Diocese of Brooklyn are making a comeback, reaching enrollment numbers they haven't seen in decades. Currents News' Jessica Easthope visited St. Francis de Sales Catholic Academy in Belle Harbor and has their secret to success.
Space is tight on the walls in the hallways of St. Francis de Sales Catholic Academy. That's because it's been 20 years since the school had this many students.
We've made great efforts in our diocese of trying to increase enrollment and let people see the value of Catholic education here in Brooklyn and Queens.
New data from the National Catholic Educational Association shows enrollment in Catholic schools nationwide is climbing back toward pre-pandemic levels. Enrollment this year is up almost 4%, and the Diocese of Brooklyn is near the top of the list, with elementary school enrollment growing 2.4%. St. Francis de Sales Catholic Academy had 569 students last school year. This year, there are 638.
The interesting thing is how the enrollment has grown this year.
Frantic, excellent.
Judy Lindner says her students have adapted seamlessly.
Let's go to Jack.
Watching her over and sometimes through plastic shields.
We are the church.
Her first graders don't take up too much space, but next year there'll be more of them.
And because we are growing in enrollment, now Mr. Scharbach is able to make the first grade into 3 classes.
And it's not only first grade that's had to modify.
It used to be our cafeteria.
As enrollment climbed, Principal Scharbach has had to transform the entire school.
One thing that the pandemic has had us do is to really be creative in how we structure a school.
About 10 minutes left.
He says it's sad to see so many people forced out of Catholic schools by the economic effects of the pandemic, a problem they've tried to keep under control at the school.
We've tried to be a little bit more understanding, trying to work with them around it, and we also have a tuition assistance committee for anyone who has fallen on tough times.
St. Francis de Sales' motto is anchored in Christ. Staff says that mindset has kept them afloat.
We continue to put faith first.
So as the school continues to make room, repurpose, and squeeze in where they can, Mr. Scharbach says it's the artwork, prayers, and projects on the walls that remind him a Catholic education is a gift. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
A 9-year-old tourist from Miami was sucker punched in the head on Monday as she walked in New York City with her mother. And it wasn't on a scary side street at night. It was in front of the Plaza Hotel at 11 o'clock in the morning. The suspect, a 27-year-old man, attacked her out of nowhere and only stopped when the doorman of the Plaza jumped in. The suspect was arrested and charged with assault. The incident comes as the city attempts to revive its tourism industry, and that's not going very well. According to NYC and Company, roughly 36 million international and domestic visitors are expected to visit the city this year. That forecast is still small compared to 2019, when the city saw over 66 million visitors. But it's still an improvement from 2020, when only 22.3 million tourists came to the city. Monday was a rough day to be a little girl in the Big Apple. Over in Coney Island, a 7-year-old was wounded by a stray bullet. The girl was also with her mother. During this incident, they were right outside a deli when gunfire rang out. It wasn't until they fled into their apartment that they noticed a wound on the girl's stomach. The girl has been treated and is expected to be okay. No arrests have been made. The two incidents with the young girls happened just as Mayor Eric Adams boasted about the accomplishments of the NYPD's new anti-gun squad. Within their first week of operations, the team made 31 arrests and took 10 illegal guns off the streets. Of those arrested, 61% have previously faced felony charges and 39% have had a history of drug-related arrests. Bishop Robert Brennan was with the families of incarcerated inmates Sunday for a special retreat. The event, which was held by the Diocese of Brooklyn's prison ministry, Thrive for Life, offered the family spiritual and legal resources. Bishop Brennan celebrated Mass at Our Lady of Sorrows in Corona, Queens, and stayed for a dinner. It was the first time such an event was held in the Diocese of Brooklyn, and 250 people attended. For more information on Thrive for Life and to keep up to date on future retreats, just go to thriveforlife.org. Bishop Brennan's weekend didn't stop there. He also visited one of the biggest food pantries in Brooklyn. St. John's Bread and Life marked its 40th anniversary. The organization was founded in 1982 by the Daughters of Charity, the Vincentians, and the parishioners of St. John the Baptist Church to address the needs of the Bed-Stuy community. Since then, St. John's Bread and Life has provided around 20 million meals. Now to a long-awaited meeting about to take place. Pope Francis will finally visit with members of the Indigenous communities in Canada to discuss the Church's role in the deaths of thousands of children in residential schools. Next week, a group of Canadian bishops, along with members of those communities, will travel to Rome for a pilgrimage of healing.
There's a strong symbolism to this for the whole country.
Pope Francis preparing to welcome Indigenous Canadians to the Vatican next week. The visit, originally scheduled for last December, was postponed because of the pandemic. It was last May when the remains of 215 children were found buried for decades on the grounds of an Indian residential school in Canada. The former school was run by the Catholic Church and later by the federal government. Former student Harvey McLeod says he was a victim of abuse at the school.
What I realized yesterday was how strong I was as a little boy. How strong I was as a little boy to be here today, because I know that a lot of people didn't come home.
Last year, Pope Francis prayed for those traumatized by the discovery.
Dei dolori e delle sofferenze del passato.
But some members of Indigenous communities are pushing for a papal apology on Canadian soil. Right now, Francis has no plans to travel to Canada. In 1991 and recently, Catholic bishops and religious communities in Canada apologized for their roles in running the schools. And in 2009, Pope Benedict XVI expressed his sorrow to Indigenous people at the Vatican. Now, everyone is hoping next week's meetings will take steps toward further healing and reconciliation.
The Holy Father, his methodology is to enter into dialogue, to listen, to respond. And so he'll have an opportunity of meeting, residential school survivors and others, and to hear what the problems are unique to each one of those three groups, and have an opportunity to respond to them.
Last year, the Canadian government committed more than $320 million to the nation's Indigenous community to help in the search for more grave sites and to help survivors who are still recovering from the trauma. There's a lot more news headed your way. Vladimir Putin trying to justify his invasion of Ukraine using the words of Jesus to try to make his point. Plus, pro-life advocates are concerned about the possible confirmation of President Biden's Supreme Court nominee. And wild weather in Texas, from tornadoes to wildfires. But there is a silver lining amid all of the destruction. We'll explain. During a pro-war rally in Moscow this week, Putin actually used Jesus' words to justify his invasion. He said Russia had to invade Ukraine to stop genocide in separatist-controlled areas, essentially a rescue mission. He then skewed scripture, paraphrasing from the Gospel of John, saying, "There is no greater love than if someone gives his soul for his friends." But the Ukrainian government says it's Putin who is committing the genocide. According to the United Nations, the war has already claimed nearly 1,000 civilians. One of the latest victims, Boris Romanchenko, a Holocaust survivor who devoted his life to preserving its history. His death was confirmed by the Buchenwald Concentration Camp Memorial Institute. He was killed in the city of Kyiv when his apartment building was hit by shelling. The president of Ukraine, who lost his own family in the Holocaust, reflected on the 96-year-old's life.
He survived Buchenwald, Dora Mittelbau, Peenemünde and Bergen-Belsen, the conveyors of death created by the Hitlerites. But he was killed by a Russian strike, which struck an ordinary Kharkiv multi-story building. With each day of this war, it becomes more obvious what denazification means to them.
Romanchenko's death comes nearly 3 weeks after Russian strikes in Kyiv hit the Babin Yar Holocaust Memorial Center, where Nazis killed nearly 34,000 Jewish people back in 1941. Turning now to Capitol Hill, the niceties are over. Senators turned up the heat on day 2 of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's historic confirmation hearings. Republicans accusing her of not being tough enough on crime and questioning the role faith plays in her decision-making. Gloria Pazmino has the story.
Judicial philosophy and a focus on her record as a public defender. It was all part of an intense day of questioning for President Joe Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
When I get a case, I ensure that I am proceeding from a position of neutrality.
Jackson responded to criticism from Senate Republicans that she had so far been vague about her judicial philosophy.
It's very important that judges rule without fear or favor.
Republicans focused on some of her work as a federal public defender.
Now let's talk about being a public defender. Did you consider that rewarding?
Senator, yes, I did, because public service is very important to me.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham was critical of the process so far, and he suggested there is a double standard when it comes to confirmation hearings.
If you're an African-American conservative woman, you're fair game to have your life turned upside down. If you express your faith as a conservative, all of a sudden you're an effing nut. And we're tired of it.
Judge Brown is expected back on the Hill Wednesday for a second day of questioning. Gloria Pazmino, Currents News.
Judge Jackson's legal view on pro-abortion views are concerning for pro-life leaders. For example, Jackson co-authored a brief in the early 2000s that prevented pro-life sidewalk counselors from approaching women outside abortion clinics. Jackson has also had pro-abortion groups as past clients, such as the Abortion Access Project of Massachusetts.
Get inside! Get inside! Run! 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 Run!
Also tonight, a scene out of The Wizard of Oz. Tornadoes touching down, sweeping through Texas and Oklahoma, destroying homes and schools. But at this point, we are hearing of a miracle. Despite the powerful storms, no one was killed. The coast isn't clear yet, though. The storms are moving across the country, leaving thousands without power or running water. And as Amy Kiley reports, the odds are that if you haven't endured the wild weather just yet, you're probably in its path.
This is the aftermath of storms near Austin.
There are a number of homes and a number of structures that have been damaged, and there are some that have been destroyed.
Closer to Dallas, here's what's left after a tornado hit the small town of Jacksboro Monday.
I've been in this district for 30 years, and this is the most catastrophic damage I've witnessed. So we're just very blessed to have facilities that were designed to sustain a storm, the storm damage that we received.
Elsewhere in Texas, the issue is wildfires from dry weather.
All I have with my mom was pictures left. I don't have none of that anymore.
Those bricks and the metal pieces, that was my playhouse. It was almost done, but the fire burned it down.
Wildfires have burned more than 100,000 acres in the past week in Texas. Just across the border, Oklahoma is recovering from storms and at least one suspected tornado. Now, severe weather is moving across several states in the southern U.S. It's bringing rain or snow farther north. I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Still to come on Currents News, Face Front True Believers, a new holy hero graces the world of comics, what you can expect from the Soul Finder. And from careers to callings, how one mechanic in Denver plans on helping the people of Ukraine. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. We've all heard of Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Catwoman, but what about a holy hero? He could be the one you prayed for. Comic book lovers now have a new guardian to turn to. Call him Father Patrick Redder, the star of the new graphic novel Soul Finder. The series follows a fictional special force of exorcists within the Catholic Church who are recruited to rid the world of demons. The series is garnering a lot of attention, getting ranked #1 on Amazon's list of new releases in religious graphic novels in January. And the writer and creator says he's even gotten letters from faithful readers who have returned to the church after reading the series. So if you want to join the journey and check out the books, just go to iconiccomics.com, or you can get the Kindle version by searching for Soul Finder on Amazon. And finally, another hero may be coming to help Ukraine, but this one doesn't wear a cape. He's a mechanic on a mission. Jennifer Meckles has his story.
There are careers and there are callings.
I work for the reconditioning department as a used car mechanic.
That is Sean Varnell's career, a technician mechanic at Mercedes-Benz of Denver. But right now, his calling?
The U.S. government cannot get involved for reasons I understand, but I, as just a private person, can.
It's calling from Ukraine.
I'm single, I don't have kids, so kind of an ideal person for that, and it just kind of grew from there. Hopefully I can help them repair military vehicles, repair ambulances, whatever they need. Honestly, I'll fill sandbags and pass out food if they need me to.
Terry Minnick is the GM at Sean's dealership, where co-workers were stunned but inspired.
And everybody is so proud of you. And we really, really, really are hoping for the best. And we just can't imagine how much courage and pride that it takes to do this.
He has a plane ticket to Poland, plans to take a train to the Ukrainian border, and is buying protective gear for his journey. Yes, this will be different from his day job.
It's an interesting mix of excited and nervous and scared.
But louder than any fear is that calling to help.
Yeah, I think everybody's been like, are you sure this is what you want to do? And I say, yeah. It's more of an urge that I feel like I should do it.
That was Jennifer Meckles reporting. The company Varnell works for actually donated $5,000 to his fundraising efforts. We wish him the best of luck on his mission and will pray for his safe return. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you with a happy update. The young girl who went viral for singing Let It Go in a bomb shelter in Ukraine is now safe. She's in Poland, staying with her grandmother. But her thoughts aren't far from home. She just sang the Ukrainian national anthem at a charity concert in front of thousands of people. Here's a bit of that performance.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на